need to learn a lot more about South Dakota courthouses, apparently. So that was really good. So our speakers today are from the Clay County Historic Preservation Commission. So a nice connection between our Sergeant at Arms and our speakers. And we'll welcome Evelyn Schlenker to get us started.
Well, Art, that was a good introduction because we have here which courthouse? Clay County. Yeah. So I'm presenting this as a spokesperson for the Clay County Historic Preservation Commission, and we've been doing this for a number of years, giving preservation awards. And down there is our website if you're caring to read a lot of very good literature. We are a governmental branch and we do get federal funding. So the mission of the Clay County Historic Preservation Commission is to promote, advise, and educate residents of Clay County, South Dakota about preserving historical sites. We support owners in terms of maintaining historic sites and identify potential new sites and districts in Clay County. We also have open meetings and workshops and presentations like this, and we talk about possible tax benefits for having a historic place. And we publish a lot and disseminate historic preservation information. And we also collaborate with the Vermillion Historic Preservation Commission, and that came into existence in 2018. So this is just the board members. Some of the board members are here. Tim Schreiner, if you want to stand, maybe you don't. He's the chair. Jim Wilson is the chair of the vice chair. Patrick Morrison is treasurer. I'm secretary. We have Jim Stone, Dennis Conkler, Bill Ranney, William Ranney, Monica Iverson, Constance Kruger, and Brendan Richards. And so the categories for awards are for this year are long-term preservation and or restoration of a structure by individuals or an organization. And then we have a special recognition award for lifelong historic preservation accomplishments. So what I'm going to do is give a brief introduction, except for the very last individual, which I will talk a little bit more about, of the three structures. And then at the end, I'll ask individuals to come up, and if they'd like to talk a little bit about their preservation of a particular structure, that would be great. So the first is the preservation of the Solomon Anderson barn. It's in Garfield Township, and these the photograph and the drawing are both by Jim Stone when he did his survey of barns. I don't know, it was 364 barns in Clay County. Pretty astonishing. This is a fairly large barn, and it is part of a building, a homestead, the Anderson Homestead, that was put on the National Register of Historic Places in 1978. So it's been well recognized as an important structure, and you can see very unique architectural features. And we will have Mary Quirk, who owns this homestead, talk a little bit about her preservation efforts. And actually, these are some of the pictures, and when she comes up, we will show them again. You can see this is an older picture, and actually the homestead was almost like a little village, but I'm not going to take her thunder. The second is the Bergen Lutheran Church near Meckling, rural Meckling, South Dakota. And there's a poster indicating that the Bergen Lutheran Church this year, in October of this year, celebrated 160 years, 60-year anniversary. And this was a picture that I took from the Evergreen Cemetery looking at the church. And we have Becky Aga, who's going to talk a little bit about that. And then the last is the restoration of the Saginaw School, which is one of the one-room schoolhouses that we had lots of in Clay County at one time. This was constructed around 1873. It was used as a school, but it was moved at least 3 times. It ceased being a school in 1969, and Dawne Olson has totally renovated it into the most beautiful, from the pictures that I've seen, the most beautiful workshop and place that you can educate people. So it's still used as a school, but a different kind of school. And the last is, you recognize this fellow. This was a picture, a beautiful picture, I think, that Tim Schreiner, now, took of Jim Wilson. And I just want to mention a couple of things. And this is going to be the tip of the iceberg. You notice I have a very small card here. Jim has education in terms of the bachelor's and master's level in political science and government, as well as in architecture. He was the historic preservation architect at the South Dakota Historical Preservation Organization when it was in Vermillion from 1979 to 1996. He then, when that moved to Pierre, he was historic preservation architect in West Virginia for a few years, and then was an extremely important individual in the renovation and restoration of historic sites in Deadwood, South Dakota. And if you look at the historical commission in Deadwood, it's incredibly impressive. And so Jim contributed to that. And then last but not least, he has a consulting business, White Wilson Associates, and that's for preservation and rehabilitation of structures. When he retired, we don't generally retire, we just do something else, right? I went from the med school to history, I don't know. He was the chair of the Clay County Historic Preservation Commission for many years. He is still involved, as you now know, of the Clay County Historic Preservation. He's also on the Vermillion Historic Preservation Commission and on the Vermillion Planning and Zoning Commission. And fun facts, Jim has taught many OLLI courses with his partner in arms, Ted Munster, having to do with political issues. He's also given tours of downtown Vermillion. He's written a number of books. He's been instrumental in getting historic districts in Vermillion, Bluff Historic District in Jolly, and several houses, including the abode that he lives in. So, you know, why don't I just give you this now? I mean, I gave you the whole spiel. So, why not come up here, Jim? See, I said I wasn't going to say anything nasty.
And you didn't.
I didn't, because I'm not nasty.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I'd like Mary Quirk to come up and talk a little about the Anderson barn. And we have this for you now.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, so if you'd like to,
Okay.
yeah, it should be right after that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this award. It's just really exciting.
Well, it's a beautiful barn.
Well, thank you.
And an amazing history, so.
It means a lot to us, and I'll just give you a little glimpse into the history here. This is just a very high level. This is how the barn looked in the early 1900s. And that top picture is the barn from the front. And I put this back picture here because Evelyn said that if you look at it, it looks like kind of a village going back there behind it. And Solomon was a very forward thinker, kind of recognized for bringing things that he is considered to have brought the first silo into South Dakota. And he also, we love this family story, he had a 200-gallon cooker in the hog house. And that was so the hogs could have hot soup every day. Many ideas. He put in a creamery, lots of different pieces in there. And there's about 24 buildings at the peak of the farm that he had on the farmstead. Now, on this barn, Solomon was, and being a forward thinker, he was a very strong personality from what the stories have been told. And one of the favorite family stories is that he didn't like anybody to waste time. He was a hard worker. So we have a 3-hole outhouse on our farm. Nobody wasted any time waiting for the outhouse. That was kind of a characteristic of his. He studied agriculture in Sweden before he immigrated and homesteaded, so he came with a good, strong background. Now, this barn was built to be a horse barn. And at that point in time, when the early 1900s, Solomon had accumulated 640 acres of land, and it took 20 horses to handle the farming on that. So this was built for the horses. Now, this is what the farmstead looks like at this point in time. And my mother, Helen Quirk, devoted a lot of her energies into preserving it, and she picked out about a dozen buildings that she wanted to make some preservation effort on, and that's what we have right now. It's, you know, none of them are completely preserved, but at least she's kept them up. And we've been very fortunate with our farmers on the farm that have helped us keep up. John Larson's currently a farmer. Before that, Ron Larson helped my mother a lot as a farmer, and then Bob and Marie Shoemaker before that. So she's gotten good help. And we were in Sweden a year ago, and when we talked to our contacts there, we were right where Solomon came from in Sweden. My son would pull out his cell phone and ask if they wanted to see what Solomon's farm looked like in South Dakota. And the look at people's faces when they saw what this looked like was just astonishment, because they were expecting to see a U.S. farm. What they were seeing was a Swedish folk museum. And that's truly, it was just, they were totally astonished there's something like this in the United States. And it wouldn't be surprising if this is one of, I won't say the best or in the best, but one of the better restorations of a typical Swedish farmstead, or an extraordinary Swedish farmstead that you have right here in Clay County. So it's a pretty special place. And my mother, her motivation for preservation was, a lot of it was just respect for the hard work it took into building this up. It was a lot of enjoyment for her because it connected her to the past. She enjoyed that a lot, but she also wanted to create a foundation for future generations to connect with the past. So that was her motivation. So now the future generation is my family, and I have a nephew who's half owner on the farm, and my son, and my husband's here today too. And so we're trying to figure out what's the best use for this preserved Swedish farmstead. So if any of you have any ideas for us where to go with this, because My mother was very much for her personal use, but we're kind of wondering if there's a broader use for it. So just getting a little thought in people's minds, and if you have any ideas, please let me know. So thank you so much for this award. It really encourages us to keep up the preservation efforts. So, thank you.
I should mention that Mary and her husband came down here for these awards from the Twin Cities. So that's how important.
It means a lot to us.
Yeah.
My nephew wanted to be here, but he couldn't, so.
Yeah.
It means a lot.
Okay. The next individual is Becky Aga, and she is associated with the Bergen Lutheran Church. And both of you?
This is JoAnn Stockland. She's another longtime member of our church.
Okay. Feel free to.
JoAnn's also my support system within the church and another longtime member. So, I wish I had some additional photos to bring to you today, but we were busy preparing for our anniversary, and since that time, I've been at my second or maybe third job in the combine. So I got a little brief respite here. So the Bergen Lutheran Church was organized as the Norwegian Evangelical Lutheran Congregation in Dakota Territory on October 8th, 1864. And we just celebrated that 160th anniversary. And the church building that you see today is affectionately known by the moniker of the Little White Church on Timber Road. And I'm sure many of you have been by there. It is definitely a landmark in our community. The early pioneers placed great importance on their faith and the construction of a church within the community. The first church was constructed in 1871. In 1909, it was voted to build a new church with new materials. I don't have information as to why they would have torn down the old church. But the cornerstone for the church that you see today was laid on October 3rd of 1909. And there's many photos in our archives at our church, one of which was horse-drawn wagons with loads of lumber outside of Fullerton Lumber Company here in Vermillion, and it said in the caption of the photo that the lumber was for Bergen Lutheran Church. The present church was completed in 1910 and dedicated on June 11th in 1911. They took great pride in the church building and made updates as necessary. In 1924, they excavated out one part of the basement that was not under the original church because the ladies needed a kitchen so they could serve. And I thought this was interesting. In 1939, it was voted to pay $5 to apply for an electric line so the church could have electricity. In 1948, the basement walls were removed and rebuilt. Again, I would love to know more about how and why that took place. But the concrete then was poured over the basement floor, and then asphalt tile was put in as well. So inside the church structure, there is now a brown ceiling, and that was installed in 1950. But I often wonder what is underneath that ceiling, because my mother and her siblings talked about sitting in church and laying their head back and looking up and staring at a mural on the ceiling of the church. Again, I would love to know what is under that ceiling. The original picture that JoAnn has shows the wooden steps that were on the church. And in 1956, they took off those old wooden steps and put on concrete steps. In 73, they remodeled the church basement, especially the kitchen. And at that time, bathrooms were built on the main level. And prior to that, there was another little white structure out back. You know what that was for. And to continue with preserving the structure that from 1910, in 1986, steel siding was put on the church, and the cost of that siding was just over $13,000. I don't know what that would equate to today. We held a siding signing Sunday in May of that year, and there are, again, photos in our archives of people that were actually signing. I remember my own daughter was 2, and she placed her hand, and we drew the hand. Those pieces of siding are on the south part of the church, so between our church and our fellowship hall. The bottom 5 rows have those signatures of church members. And when the siding went on, it took away the bell tower and the louvers. And so then the next year, we had to put some sort of decoration, I guess, on there and added the crosses. So in 1989, discussions started to add on a fellowship hall. And then they began fundraising in 1992. Lots of other discussions as to which direction, how to attach it, all those took place. But in June of 1997, the project of the fellowship hall was complete and paid for through many donations. Since that time, there's obviously been necessary upkeep projects, painting, carpeting, furnaces, carpeting in our basement. We do have a board of trustees that are kind of in charge of making any repairs and upkeep as needed, and oftentimes with suggestions from others. But I guess the main thing is a church is more than a building. But Bergen Church has stood on this prairie for 114 years through storms, drought, floods, and it is our prayer, along with other congregational members, that this building will be a landmark and a place of worship for many generations to come. Thanks be to God.
Yeah, I wanted to tell a little story.
Oh, just
When I was about 2 1/2, my sister was 1 1/2, and my baby brother was in the pew, and my dad was in the choir, and my mom was with Wes. So during the sermon, my sister and I decided to go up in front and stomp on box elder bugs. We had a great time doing that, and of course my mother probably, fainted or whatever, but and then the box elder bugs, stayed around for quite a while. I haven't seen them for a long time, but when my sister got married, one was crawling up her veil, and they took bets about how long it would take to get to her top, whatever. So for this church, it's very important for me, and I was baptized there with my younger sister and younger brother. I was confirmed there, and I was married there. And I'm hoping when the time comes, I can have my funeral there. I mean, that's
In a
like
long time.
long time, like whatever, yeah. But anyway, but the different things that has changed the church. I remember a lot of them when we had to be in the basement, and we had Easter Sunday breakfast, and in the little kitchen, we had to crack the eggs and whatever. And when I got married in '72, that's where we had our little reception. And of course, then they remodeled the kitchen a little bit in '73, so we missed out on that one. But, and then when they built on through the church, all these changes, but they were all very good changes that was needed to help preserve the church and preserve its, status in the community. And I know a lot of people, when we have, some event or something, a lot of people come from Vermillion to there, Pleasant Valley, Dalesburg, the surrounding communities like our new fellowship hall. So anyway, thanks.
Dawne, could you come up, please? I've known Dawne Olson for many years, and I didn't realize that she had gotten into a whole new, I mean, she makes the most beautiful canoes. I mean, she's quite the artist. So Dawne, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to say something?
I can say a few things. I didn't make notes.
Well, you don't have to make notes.
But thank you so much for this and for inviting me to be part of this. Is really special. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into restoring a building or a house or any type of building, actually. But I kind of, what's the nice way to say? I kind of coerced my husband into letting me do this project because when we moved in 2012, I had already started doing some building of canoes and other projects, and I really wanted like a dedicated workspace for myself. And he said he wanted to start farming full-time, and I was a little reluctant to move. And then I was walking through the farm site, and this building was there, and I thought it was like tucked in between all the gas tanks and the tractor shed and everything on their yard. And I thought this would make such an awesome shop. So this little seed of an idea started, and I said, you know, I wouldn't have any problem coming here and moving here if I could have this building. But I said, we're going to have to pick it up and put a new floor under it because it was completely full of dry rot. All of the base was. Several windows were broken. And you can't see all the individual panes in that picture, but there's a lot. I cut a lot of glass to fix windows and did a lot of glazing. But I couldn't have done it without my husband. He really took the initiative to get up and pour a new foundation for the building and help me completely tear it down. And then like every year I'd try to find a new project to do to make the building a little better and a little better. So the first year, obviously we needed a new roof on it right away. After we moved it in 2016, we moved it in, the fall of 2015 actually. So I opened it to the public in 2016, but when we moved it, we had gutted everything out of it and fixed all the windows, and then the next year I think we put a new roof on it, and then I think the next year I painted it, and then I got, new windows one year, and just like constantly trying to, make little improvements to it over the years. And I think I love the passion that is expressed sometimes with restoring these buildings, because it does connect us to the people who we know and love, like our families, the past and the future. And my grandmother was a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse in Miller, South Dakota, and then my mother taught in a one-room schoolhouse for a while. And I didn't think of myself as being a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse at any point, but it kind of ended up turning out that way, which I love sharing the space with people. If anybody, I do teach classes there, but not like every day. So like maybe like 5-6 a year. So if anybody ever just wants to come by and see the building, I have a ton of pictures from when it was used as like a tractor shed for welding and all kinds of repairs on the farm site. But yes, it was moved. I don't know if this was already said, but it was moved 3 times. The first time, it was for a school that had been burned down, Prairie Center Schoolhouse burned down, and this was moved from Saginaw onto that foundation. I guess they came kind of as a kit, so you could take a building and it would match the footprint of the other building, so that worked out for them. My father-in-law attended the school for just like a short while, and then they started busing kids to Vermillion, but he remembers going to school in this building. And so then my husband's grandpa moved it to the farm when he moved there in I think like maybe the 70s or 80s, and then of course in 2012 we moved it for the 3rd time and hopefully the final time. But that's that. Thank you.
Well, that concludes our program. If you have any questions or like to visit with the presenters, feel free to. I want to thank Rotary for sponsoring this presentation. This is a great venue, and we appreciate your support. Hopefully we get to do this every year, because there are so many places in Clay County that really need recognition and love and preservation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Really some amazing projects. I always love hearing about these every year. All right.